Oh really? Find the right place. Flat surface. Remove a bit of twist, unless of course you want a really quirky spoon that incorporates the twist. We're trying to tame the wood a little bit. Or you might decide to do it freehand, which I, to be quite honest, prefer now. To get a bit of symmetry, centre line is quite handy. Can't always go by the pith, it's not always central. But just by running a finger along the side, get it parallel to one side, got a reasonably straight line. Keep checking it, looking at it. That needs a bit more of a bulge there. When you think it's about right, you could begin to darken it slightly. It's not absolutely essential. Don't do it right to the edge, just in case there's a little bit of splitting, because obviously the wood dries quickest at the ends of the fibres, so you can get a bit of split, especially in this sunlight. So we leave a little bit. We can always saw that off later, or just use the axe if we need to. So that's a reasonably pleasant egg sort of shape. Now we may want a very long handle, most likely to be somewhere around there. Because we've got this centre line, it's fairly easy to keep it symmetrical. Again, sketchy lines like that. My preference is for a flare there, which could be finished off. Heart shape or a ball or whatever you want. The curve between the bowl and the stem is quite important, because if that's not symmetrical, it definitely looks a little bit odd. Yeah. Looks a bit wrong. Looks like a mistake. It doesn't look quirky and interesting, it looks incompetent. So that's worth taking a bit of time over. As you see, that at the moment is quite asymmetrical. So another area where aesthetics is quite important is the change in shape towards the stem, more of an egg type shape. It's quite possible to make a spoon that's completely circular in the bowl area. Some shapes just look a bit better than others, so we have a different shape curve. These sort of annual rings, along these annual rings. So obviously the outer ring is longer than this one, so it will tend to shrink more along that big ring. So the top surface will end up bending downwards at the sides. It also loses moisture from the ends of the fibres much more quickly from the sides of the fibre. So we remove as much bulk as we can, as quickly as we can, to avoid that happening. This bowl, for example, having taken this much material out yesterday, I can fairly happily leave it out in a fairly dry atmosphere, knowing it's not going to crack. And that was completely green, it was only cut down about a week ago. So this is my technique, very safe, depending on the thumb in place there. So you're actually squeezing the wood between the thumb and the tool. There's no freehand scraping, slashing. Very restricted movement. It's almost just like clenching a fist repeatedly. At the early stages, with any tool, you know lots of material has to come out, so you can just cut across the grain quite happily without any worries about having to go with the grain downhill or anything like that at this stage. Just get the material out of the way. That's quite an important thing. This is blackthorn. It's pretty green. It's cut about 3 weeks ago. It's a bit tougher than some, but it's okay. Most woods are pretty easy to carve as long as they're green. People often say, oh, I've got a lovely piece of so-and-so that I've had for about 3 or 4 years. I really want to make a spoon out of it. And they can, but I'd suggest they use a gouge and probably powered tools, because it's going to be very hard on the muscles and the edge, of course, the tools you're using. It may even be a split beyond redemption because it's just been left around to dry in an uncontrolled fashion.
So you're using your thumb as a kind of safety fulcrum there, aren't you? So despite the fact you're cutting towards yourself, then that thumb ensures that the follow-through zone
simply can't reach, especially with my design, which has the blade coming out more of an angle than some of the mass-produced ones on the market.
Okay.
So, one of the reasons for this design. Don't want to be sued by Frost. Okay. I developed this design because I found it a very natural extension of the wrist. Lots of, this being a rotating joint.
Yeah.
Well, it's hinging and rotating. It's very clever. You can take out complete scallops and
you can sort of melon ball stuff, can't you?
Right.
With it,
Ice cream scoops, that sort of thing. Once you've got past the initial rough surface, you can make very quick progress. Once you get the hang of the angle at which it's applied to the surface, there's no control over it except yourself. Rather like when you're using a draw knife compared to a plane. A plane controls the amount of protrusion and how thick the shaving is. Whereas a draw knife, the angle just depends on your control. Same with this, really.
Yeah.
As you see, pretty quick progress.
And you've got another technique for incorporating both thumbs on that. Is that for leverage?
I do. That's more using a straight-bladed knife for the whittling, general whittling stage.
Yeah.
Don't really use that.
So the back of the spoon as opposed to the front.
Not sure I do use that ever with the hook knife, actually. But you have to be conscious of the direction that the blade is travelling all the time. You don't just kind of throw the blade at the wood and hope for the best. You kind of imagine its path, the way you're aiming for. Which is exactly what you do with lots of tools, really. With an axe, for example, freehand cutting. You imagine just how far you want that blade to go and what shape chunk is going to come off the wood as a result.
Yeah.
If you don't, there's very little control. Having talked a lot about control, it doesn't mean the whole thing isn't actually quite relaxing. Like a lot of things, once you learn to have control, you can relax into the process. Until you've achieved that level of control, it will be a little bit stressful and probably quite tiring as well.
Is that wet and dry on
the
600, did you say? 600
just
grit?
dry actually at this moment.
Just dry, yeah.
So you can now see you can't see the file marks that were on there before, but you can see the 600 grit marks if you look closely. It's slightly greyish, isn't it? Yeah. Right. So just do a little section first. Flat. You don't want any rounding over the edge.
Run a bone saw down the middle of a bit of dowel and just take the burr off.
Yeah. Have a bit of this blackthorn. Be quite nice.